With the official last hires of the coaching staff, it seems like we can finally say that the 2025 season is officially over for us. And now we get to look ahead to next year, and, the season begins now. The Baltimore Ravens have some major roster decisions that they need to come up with. They have $22 million in cap space. They have the number 14th overall pick. And they also have, obviously, a brand new head coach and schemes that are trying to build a championship roster. I think this team alone is already a championship roster. However, as time goes on and we take our emotions out of it, there are more holes on this team than some Ravens fans like to believe, or at least act like we have. What's up, Ravens flock? Today we are going to break down everything that you need to know about the Ravens 2026 offseason. Free agents, salary cap, draft picks, and the positions that the Baltimore Ravens must attack if they want to bring home a Lombardi No. 3. On the screen now is a finalized version of all the coaches that have been hired. This is our final coaching staff going into the 2026 season. A lot of hires that I'm extremely excited about, as are most Ravens fans. It looks like we got a good mix of people that were once with the organization that are now coming back in different roles, so they kind of know how the Ravens work. But we also have a lot of outside guys coming to the Ravens for the first time, as well as some college people who, I think, again, as I emphasized in previous videos, college coaches, especially the really, really talented ones that a lot of people know, are much better at developing players. Not always. There obviously are some head coaches in the NFL that are known to develop players. But when you take your average NFL coach who's been in the NFL for 10 plus years, and then you take your average college coach that's coming into the NFL, I think it's a nice mix, especially for the rookies and the young guys, to have some coaches, assistant coaches, who were in college with them just a few years ago now to help kind of branch them and bridge them over to the pros and be able to develop them to the next level. It's like a learning curve that they kind of both go through together. And I think it's really important to have both on the team. I really like this mix of coaches that we have going into the 2026 season. So this will be obviously the first full off season under head coach Jesse Minter. GM Eric DeCosta entering a critical roster shaping year. I know Steve Biscotti spoke highly of Eric DeCosta, but if draft picks don't start hitting and, development doesn't start happening sooner rather than later, Eric DeCosta is definitely the next man on the list whose seat becomes pretty hot. So it's going to be interesting to see if, he kind of switches things up this year and maybe trades up what he does in free agency, if he goes for a big splash and gets rid of some draft picks maybe and some trades, instead of, sitting back or trading back or hesitating to move up, because he definitely needs to have a good offseason as well and a good season coming up. Otherwise, it might be time to start looking for a new GM as well. I don't think that's going to necessarily happen next year if this year doesn't go, as planned or have massive progress. But if this continues for another 2, 3 years, 4 years, the GM is the next seat to go, because now we can't blame John Harbaugh. GM's the one building the team, has the biggest say in the draft outside of the owner. He can listen to coaches, head coaches, and who they want to go get. And, a good GM and a good head coach, they have a good relationship where, they see out the same guys for the most part. However, if there were to come a situation where a GM is set on, say this year, Jesse Minter is telling DeCosta, this is not true, this is just an example, hey, DeCosta, give up everything. I don't care. Give up everything. Go get Bain. I think getting him is going to turn this franchise around immediately, and we're going to have a generational young edge rusher for years to come. Jesse Minter can beg as much as he wants for that to happen. If Eric DeCosta isn't on board with it, he's not going to do it. So at the end of the day, Eric DeCosta needs to start hitting as of this year. But it'll be interesting to see how their relationship goes throughout this offseason. And obviously, the biggest goal of them all is to bring back that third Lombardi trophy in the franchise history. I think it's well overdue. Seeing Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry win one and go out on top together. Well, I shouldn't say go out on top. Lamar's not going anywhere. Derrick Henry says he's not going anywhere with a Super Bowl win. I don't know. Maybe that could deter him to go out on top. But seeing them win one together, and honestly, I would love if we brought back D-Hop and seeing all three of them win one together. That's just, that'll bring tears to my eyes. I always tell people the last Super Bowl that the Ravens won, I was young. I'm 32, going to be 33 now. So during their last Super Bowl, I was like 19, I think. 18, 19, around that age. And the emotions for football just weren't there quite yet. I loved football, but from a different perspective. You start appreciating things more in different ways as you grow older. And I think, when the Ravens win this next Super Bowl, it's going to be a completely different feeling going through my body. I'm going to appreciate it so much more, enjoy every minute of it. I'll definitely be out in Baltimore for the parade. I'll definitely make it a priority to be there. So just going back, this is the first real chance for Minter and DeCosta to fully align the roster with their vision. And it's going to be really interesting to see exactly what that vision is. Looking forward to some of the free agents that we already have on the team. First and foremost, I'm just going to read a few definitions as to what the different types of free agents are. Because I think a lot of people out there, especially fans, get a little confused. I know I get confused as far as like the money situation, the cap situation, the dead money, if you release him, you still have dead. Like, some of that stuff doesn't make sense to me. I'm still trying to learn the cap space. That's definitely something as this channel grows, this year in particularly, and then hopefully by next year I start grasping that a little bit more so I can dive deeper in depth with that kind of information. But the numbers stuff just kind of still confuses me a little bit. I'm not exactly sure on all of it. But so an unrestricted free agent is any player with 4 or more accrued seasons and has an expired contract. That player is free to negotiate and sign with any team. A restricted free agent is a player with 3 accrued seasons and an expired contract. Restricted free agents are free to negotiate and sign with any team, but their original team can offer them one of the various qualifying offers that come with the right of a first refusal and or draft pick compensation. And then an exclusive rights free agent is any player with fewer than 3 accrued seasons and an expired contract. If his original team offers him a 1-year contract at the league minimum based on his credited seasons, the player cannot negotiate with other teams. So the unrestricted free agents that the Ravens have this year, just going to name them off real quick. Draymond Jones, Alohi Gilman, DeAndre Hopkins, Kyle Van Noy, Tyler Linderbaum, Ardarius Washington, Patrick Ricard, Tylan Wallace, Joseph Noteboom, David Ojabo, Awuzie, Brent Urban, Jake Hummel, Tyler Huntley, Danielle Falele, tight end Charlie Kohler, Jordan Stout, and Isaiah Likely. And then we only have one restricted free agent. That's Keaton Mitchell. And then our exclusive rights free agents are CJ Okoye, Dayton Wade, Corey Bullock, and Carl Jones Jr. I think the biggest names on that list are pretty self-explanatory to, NFL fans, especially Ravens fans. Draymond Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, Kyle Van Noy, Tyler Linderbaum, Isaiah Likely, Tyler Huntley, and Patrick Ricard. Those are the top guys that you really have to keen on. I don't believe that all of those guys are top priorities. I'm okay with seeing Kyle Van Noy leave. DeAndre Hopkins, I would love to see him back. I understand if they don't bring him back. Draymond Jones, awesome motor. Love the way he played for us when he came over. I would love to see him back, but I also don't know what he's going to be asking, and I don't think you can overpay him. Tyler Linderbaum is our number one. We need to retain him. There's a lot of rumors going around, and honestly a fear of mine that he's going to follow John Harbaugh over to New York. If we lose him, that does really, really hurt this team. So we need to, above all, figure out a way to get a deal done with him. Isaiah Likely would love to have him back. I'm pretty sure he's going to walk. He's going to want too much money. So he can leave. Tyler Huntley, he'll be back. I think he loves playing with Lamar. They seem to be really good friends, and I know he had a really close connection with John Harbaugh, but I think he'll be back for a low in Baltimore. And then Patrick Ricard is another interesting name. I think he's so versatile that you bring him back, but he's another name where you can't overpay him. You can find good blocking young tight ends. So the biggest questions are, can we afford Linderbaum? We definitely can, but Lamar has to get this contract extension done ASAP so we really know what we're working with. Hopkins coming back again. I understand if they were to let him go, why, his age. But I do think that Hopkins was available in some of the biggest moments for Lamar, and, his hands are still there. His speed might not be there. He might not be as crisp in the routes. But as a veteran, for young guys to ask questions to and just to be there, I think we underused Hopkins last year. I think we can still get a decent amount out of Hopkins that we didn't get out last year. But I, again, completely understand if we let him go. The re-signing likely, I don't think we're going to re-sign. If we somehow do bring him back without overpaying him, that's awesome. I mean, obviously that's huge, but I don't think we will. And then Van Noy, he can leave. Honestly, he can go. I'm tired of him in Baltimore. He doesn't need to be here anymore. He's old. Let's get younger and kick the can on that one. So then we move on to Keaton Mitchell. Baltimore, for the most part, we usually protect our restricted free agents. So I'm assuming Mitchell is going to most likely stay, which I'm okay with that. Mitchell is a change of pace guy. Again, a lot of people are saying he's a lot slower last year after his injury. I don't think so at all. I mean, it just depends on how you use him. And the thing that Ravens fans, as a Ravens fan, it pisses me off, but everyone's entitled to their opinions. But I think a lot of people online are just casuals, and obviously we have our trolls out there that purposely say things to get us fired up, and I fall for it 24/7. But the biggest thing about these guys is you don't need superstars everywhere. Look at the Seattle Seahawks. They just won it all. They don't have superstars on their defense. They have some really good players, but they have a team and a coach, that worked well. Like, you don't need superstars at all these positions. Like, I've seen, that the Ravens need to get another running back because Ali and Mitchell aren't the guys. Like, improve the offensive line. Get an offensive line that can create huge gaping holes, and let's see what those guys can do. Because I love Mitchell and I love Ali. I think they're both very capable. I do not think we need to waste a draft pick. Even the 6th, 7th round, we do not need to waste a draft pick on a running back. That would be ridiculous. The only way we're wasting a draft pick on a running back is if somehow, some way, Jeremiah Love falls to 14. And even though that just contradicts everything I just said, Jeremiah Love is amazing. That's not going to happen, so we don't even have to worry about that. But yeah, it's just, we need to build up the offensive line. Everything else will look so much better. The receivers will have longer times to run their routes. The running backs will have bigger holes. Lamar will have more time back there. There's just so much that comes off of fixing the line that we don't need superstars in the backfield. We don't need superstar wide receivers. I love A.J. Brown and the idea of bringing him in, but we don't need that. We're fine with the receivers we have. Zay Flowers is fine. Rashad Bateman is fine. We don't need another superstar receiver to win a Super Bowl. That's a ridiculous statement. And then it's same on the defensive side of the ball. We have, get the pass rush going, Focus in on that. Get outside linebackers. If the pass rush can get to the quarterback faster, our cornerbacks don't have to cover for as long. I think cornerback is a hole that we have on this team, but it's like a quiet hole. It depends on what we do with Marlon Humphrey. They'll have to make a decision on him soon, I think by March 1st. If they're going to release him, I could see them releasing him. And then if they do end up releasing him, then yes, we do have a need at cornerback. If they keep Marlon Humphrey and he's willing to restructure and take less money, cornerback is another one that I keep seeing online where you don't need a superstar cornerback. Nate Wiggins is awesome. He had a really good rookie season. He had an okay season last year. It's his second year in the league. He's learning. He has a much better coaching scheme now. He's going to be just fine. I love Nate Wiggins. I think he's a true lockdown number one cornerback. He stays healthy. Marlon Humphrey, obviously, he's kind of iffy. He's getting older. I get that. But at the same time, again, if you improve that pass rush so that those cornerbacks don't have to guard for as long because the quarterback's rushed instead of having a clean pocket 9 out of 10 times when he's dropping back, you don't need absolute superstars back there. You can get away with the players that we have. Obviously, throughout every offseason, you still want to add guys. If you can get a cheap veteran, in free agency, or you want to draft a cornerback that's a development project, later in the draft, do it. But I just think so much of our problems are solved by fixing the pass rush on the O-line that all these other holes that people are saying that the Ravens have will fix themselves. We don't need. It's not like an edge rusher we need. Interior offensive line we need. Cornerback, wide receiver, an outside linebacker is up there. That's also, but with the blitz package and stuff, that's a need. But these other skill positions that people are like, oh, well, you need this. No, we don't. We don't need any of those guys. It's nice when we get them, and we will, I'm assuming, go get another wide receiver just to have a big-bodied receiver. If we're bringing in a receiver, he has to be a big-bodied receiver. That's what I want. That's what we need. If we don't get like an A.J. Brown, DJ Moore in a trade, like if we don't get one of those big names, we will be just fine. We don't need a superstar receiver. It would be nice to have one. We don't need it. Sorry, that's a little rant of mine that, I'm becoming more and more involved in the Twitter community, more than I've ever been, and I just constantly see these, everyone's allowed to have their opinions, but I just constantly see these terrible takes, in my opinion. Obviously, some people think my opinions are bad too, so that's a lovely thing about having your own channel. You get to voice your opinions, and then you get to go listen to other opinions and compare and contrast and see what people are thinking. As for the actual salary cap situation, the Ravens, as of right now, are projected $22 million in cap space. That's ranked 17th in available cap space amongst the league. And then obviously, if we extend just Lamar Jackson, that changes everything. So those numbers will completely be better for us. We just need that to happen. The draft capital, obviously, we have the number 14th overall pick. We have 6 original picks. We have 4 projected compensatory picks. And then altogether, that's 11 total draft picks this year. Eric DeCosta is known to love the volume. I'm hoping he gets away from that and, again, trades up once or twice in the draft and stops going for volume and goes for quality. We only had 30 sacks this past season, which was tied for, I believe, 3rd to last in the league, which is not great. And that's down from 60 sacks we had in 2023. So that production, again, needs to be a lot better. Mike Green and Robinson are under contract, so that's good. Matabike's future is still uncertain. I know we got some tweets from him that I went over in some past videos. Hopefully it's good news, but you just never know. So until something's officially said, you can't rely on that. Our number 2 biggest need is interior offensive line. We need guard competition. Linderbaum situation, again, is huge. That can really mess up this entire offseason if we don't get him signed. But the protection for Lamar and the holes in the run game must improve. Number 3, so those are the 2 biggest needs that I stated earlier. Edge and O-line. Now comes in the sub stuff. The stuff that, yes, we need it, but it's not like, oh my God, we absolutely need the best player available or we need to go get a superstar. So 3 is wide receiver. Zay Flowers had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. Awesome. Love him. I know there's a lot of haters out there that say he's not a number 1 receiver. Tell that to the stat sheets. He was 7th overall in yards this year. Trey McBride is in there as the 6th, so take him out. He was the top 6 receivers in receiving yards this year. He is a number 1 receiver. Obviously, if you bring in a traditional X receiver, which is usually a big-bodied, guy for possessions, I think that only helps Zay Flowers to become even more of a number 1 target. I think he goes up to 12 to 15 yards per season. And then the big body receiver would be a bigger threat for like end zone targets and third downs. But I still think even bringing in a true X, being that big guy, I still think he has less receiving yards than Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers is our leading receiver in back-to-back seasons and will continue to be our leading receiver going forward, in my opinion. Bateman struggled in 2025. I'm a huge Bateman fan. Everyone knows that by now if you've watched my videos. I get it if they look to pair him with some draft picks or something for a trade, though. But I think with the right development and working to his strengths, I think he's a good receiver. And then Hopkins, as I touched on before, possibly gone. We don't know there. Cornerback. Cornerback is another one that right now, as it sits, we don't absolutely need a cornerback. The Marlon Humphrey situation determines everything. If they release him, suddenly we really need a cornerback. If they restructure his deal and he's willing to take less money to stay in Baltimore, we don't absolutely need a quarterback. Nate Wiggins is entering his third year. Awuzie is a free agent. I'm okay bringing him back on another minimum contract, but you can't overpay for him. And then, I think, in one of my last videos, I brought up Woolen from Seattle. Go get him in free agency. There's some guys out there, but it's not a top need. And then last but not least, the tight end position. Obviously, we extended Andrews this past season. Likely is probably gone. He's going to want too much money. You can't overpay him. Which means Kohler is also a free agent. I think they bring him back. Either that or they go after a young guy in the draft. There's a couple options there that I like a lot. So we'll see how that all works out. I think they'll end up bringing back Charlie, though. I want to hear your guys' opinions down in the comment. Give me your opinion on, if we should draft a pass rusher at 14 and who you think that should be. Should we sign a mid-tier veteran guard? Should we let Hopkins walk? Obviously, most of you should agree with me. Should we extend Linderbaum? That's a huge yes. And then should we add a young cornerback within the first 3 rounds, or do we go out and get a veteran? This offseason is definitely going to define the next 5 years of Ravens football. It's a big draft with a new coaching staff, new schemes, new opinions, new ideas. And the biggest question is just what move should the Baltimore Ravens make first? Should they go pass rush, offensive line, or wide receiver? If you want full Ravens offseason coverage, draft breakdowns, free agency reactions, and bold predictions, please don't forget to hit subscribe, like this video, and comment. This is going to be a wild next couple of months, and I'll be right here for it all.